But also, we know that low-income kids are much more residentially mobile than high-income kids. So there's a lot more student turnover. In Chicago, it's not uncommon for a classroom of 25 kids to have 5 kids join the classroom over the course of a year. Right? And you can imagine the problems that teachers have in getting new kids as they flow into these classrooms back on board in terms of where the school is. Yeah, I think some of you know about the problems I'm talking about, right? It's also harder to attract good teachers to attend and stay in low-quality schools. That's shown up in a number of studies looking at what kind of teachers will come to low-income schools and stay in low-income schools. Some come sometimes on a mission, but then with time they burn out and they want to get to a suburban school. So that kind of pattern, all these things have become intensified over the last 30 years, right, as the concentration of poor students has increased. So all those things have implications for school functioning, differential school functioning between low and high income kids, and those in turn translate into these gaps between high and low income kids in terms of attainment. So that's the school story. So what about policy? What thoughts do we have about policy? Income inequality is a fundamental problem in producing these problems, but we don't jump to income redistribution as a policy solution given the political battles that we've seen over the last 10 or 15 years in even the faint-hearted attempts to try to alter tax policy to make it a little bit more less regressive. So it's important, well, income-based policies play a role, I'll talk a little bit about that, but we place much more emphasis on school-based policies. And we would attack the problem on 3 fronts. One, which the Academic Distinction Fund will no doubt like to see and certainly agree with, is that it's important to have systems of effective preschools. Second, it's important to have effective school reforms for kindergarten through 12th grade. And then we also talk about ideas about economic support programs that are likely to be politically sustainable, like the Earned Income Tax Credit. And then there's a policy experiment that I'd be glad to talk at length about, New Hope, which was a support program for working parents that ended up translating into better achievement for their kids. But let's talk about these pre-K programs and effective school reforms. So our second book is really trying to spend a lot of time describing classrooms and infrastructure is what we call it, that seems to be associated with effective preschools and effective elementary schools. We highlight the preschool system in Boston, which has undergone a rigorous evaluation and has been shown to be very effective in boosting kids' test scores. What Boston did was make a very strategic decision about its pre-K to not try to offer pre-K as broadly as possible, but to try to offer as high a quality pre-K as possible and then build out in terms of coverage after the high quality pre-K was in place. So what they did was to look over the research literature and see what sort of curricula for literacy and math skills have proven themselves in rigorous evaluations. And there are a number of curricula that have been shown to be consistently effective in promoting literacy skills. There's a different set of curricula that have been associated with promoting math skills. And they developed a curriculum based on 2 of these curricula, one on math and one reading. They manualized everything so that the teachers can all see what the curriculum is week by week, what the goals are. There was extensive training of all the teachers. There's an extensive coaching system where teachers are actually very much welcoming these coaches into their classrooms to get advice about how they can implement the curriculum more effectively. The classrooms are set up, it's not a drill and kill kind of setup. The classrooms have little workstations scattered around. The first few weeks, the teachers spend a lot of time trying to get all the kids to understand how important it is to be quiet, pay attention. They can have fun when they're at their given station and they're learning about shapes or numbers. But when they transition, it's a time to be polite and quiet, and it takes a little while for them to get on board, but eventually they do. And so there'll be this coordinated curriculum between a teacher reading The Little Red Hen Makes Pizza and activities for learning about vegetable names and shapes and all the kind of things that kids might learn associated with the story. There's a teacher aide in the classroom trying to support the kids as they do their activities, trying to get them to repeat the vocabulary words and really try to internalize what the lesson is. It's a very systematic approach. It's not a cheap approach, as you can imagine, because it is a substantial amount of professional development. There's a number of coaches who are working full-time, but the results seem to be very, very impressive. Math scores are up, reading scores are up. The evaluation also had a test of what's called executive functioning, kids' ability to control their impulses and pay attention, and the scores on those tests were also up. So it really is possible to put in place a smart, effective pre-K program, taking advantage of all the research, especially research on the last 10 years or so, with regard to proven curricula for literacy and math. Turning to elementary schools, we highlight a group of charter schools in Chicago that also have supplied their teachers with the infrastructure that they need to be effective. There's a very elaborate reading assessment that all the teachers give their kids 3 times over the course of the year. Kids are in step 1 to 9 in the assessments, and the kids' progress is monitored very closely. Teachers know if a child is on step 3, what sort of help the child needs to make it to step 4. There's a very systematic kind of curriculum. And again, the classroom is set up in a way that's not just chairs and drill and kill, but it's mixing together group activities with individual activities. There's a lot of training that has to take place. Again, there's coaching, but and there's accountability. Teachers are held accountable for the results of their kids. But what's important, and this is what we stress over and over in the book, is that you can't just put in an outside accountability system and expect teachers to respond, because many of them are trying to teach as best they can. Teachers tend to teach the way that the teachers that they had taught. And in these 2 examples, the pre-K and the elementary schools, the teachers had the infrastructure, they had the curriculum, they had the coaching, they had the professional development necessary to really understand what this curriculum was about and to implement it effectively. Everyone from kindergarten to grade 5 is on the same page with respect to the kind of behavior that they expect in kids. Everyone is on the same page with respect to the flow of the literacy and the math curriculum as you go from grade to grade. So the teachers are not fundamentally different in how they're teaching about math. And they can count on the fact that kids coming from the prior grade will have learned math in a certain way, and the math that they teach can build on those skills. So, and then another example, which is a different kind of example, is New York City, which about 10 years ago put in an initiative called New Century Schools. And it was smaller high schools. They broke up a lot of existing big comprehensive high schools and put in place a system of small schools. And they tried small schools before in the 1980s. They had a lot of money from a big foundation. A few good schools were developed, but it didn't really go anywhere because it wasn't very systematic. With this initiative, there was a group that had been involved in the earlier initiatives who ran the process by which entities, nonprofits usually, could submit proposals to run small high schools. So all the lessons from the past were distilled into these 10 points, and every single proposal had to address all these 10 points. The nonprofit had to have a community partner engaged. The nonprofit had to have a school superintendent that was willing to take responsibility for what they were proposing, right? So, and there were certain requirements for how these small high schools had to be set up as well. There was a big evaluation that was done because these schools are very popular. There's a big lottery to try to get in, and you can compare how well the kids who won the lottery did with the kids who lost the lottery. And the kids who won the lottery are doing much better in terms of passing the state Regents exam, which is very tough, in terms of graduating from high school. So it's really a proven kind of initiative. And the point here isn't that, that you must have these charter schools, because that's what Chicago did, or you must have exactly what the Boston pre-K system did, because there are a lot of possibilities here. And what we really want are for people to realize that you really need to couple accountability with infrastructure in the sense of providing teachers with some kind of systematic research-based curriculum that is proven effective and that can address some of the higher levels of skills that kids really need to be able to have middle-class jobs. So we also have an example of an economic support program. This was something I was involved with for a number of years in Milwaukee. It made an offer to families, and it said, if you commit to 30 hours of work, we'll provide a package of benefits that subsidize childcare, that subsidize health insurance, that give you an earning supplement so your family income is above the poverty line. We'll provide you with a community service job if you really need it to get a foothold in the labor market. And what it takes from you is a commitment to full-time work. And as soon as work hours fell below 30 hours, then these benefits were no longer available to the families, right? So it was a real kind of bilateral relationship that many families took advantage of. And again, it was set up in a lottery kind of way, so you could track how well the families did, including the children. What made this a very interesting study is that we weren't just interested in whether the mothers were working more and receiving less welfare. We were interested in whether these changes in the family translated through to the benefit of the kids. And what you found was big increases in achievement, especially for boys, big improvements in behavior, much less problem behavior, especially in the boys. These were kids in inner city Milwaukee neighborhoods. Half were African American, about a third were Latino. These are the kids whose futures are very much in doubt, and these were the kids who were helped most by being able to support families. So you can't just do it with schools. You've got to think about family supports. You've got to do it all in a climate of a political climate that we're all very familiar with. You have to do it in a very economically constrained climate. We keep hoping things are going to get better, but unless you've got a concrete way of moving forward, it's going to be hard to address these problems. As I say, the elements are accountability and education infrastructure. But the bottom line is very important here. It's really fundamental values that Americans hold dear. Will the United States still lead the country 25 years from now? will children still be able to do better than their parents? Right? So unless we can do something about this flattening out of the educational attainment and make the 21st century the American century, the second American century, with the economic power provided by human capital, all the things that we hold near and dear are really at risk. Thank you very much.